Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, July 25th. Derek Van Riper, Chris Welsh, Eno Saris, all here with you on this episode. We discuss some recent prospect news and notes. Of course, it's Project Prospect, being that it's Tuesday. Interestingly enough, we talked about a player on the Monday show who got promoted. So we did that a day earlier than usual. Normally, that's a Tuesday tradition. Sorry if we stepped on your toes Tuesday, but sometimes things happen. We're doing some leaderboard surfing at Double A, looking at some hitters that have performed very well, some guys that could be moved at the deadline, or maybe guys that could see some time before the end of this season, given how well they played at that level. Got a few mailbag questions to get to as well, but we begin with the freshest news. Alika Williams, who we discussed yesterday, kind of in passing. We were talking about the Robert Stevenson trade that the Rays made. Alika Williams was the other side of that trade. He has been promoted by the Pirates. And as I mentioned yesterday, Williams went 37th overall in the 2020 draft. He's put together his best results in the minors so far after the trade, working at AAA Indianapolis. A 35.8% hard hit rate. That's based on the Fangraphs number. A 126 WRC plus. Controlled the strike zone really well. And he's pulling the ball more than usual, trying to get to some power, it appears. So that seems to be the adjustment so far. Welsh, I'll throw it to you first. Alika Williams with the Pirates joining a depth chart that is unsettled at a couple of spots, and he's one of probably 3 or 4 different guys where you look and you say, maybe he's a regular, maybe he's a bench guy, and it's going to be an ongoing battle really for the rest of this season and probably into 2024 to determine who actually sticks as the bigger parts of this core.
Maybe, maybe with Alika Williams. Funny enough, he was at ASU. I saw him in college because he played with Torkelson. He played with Gage Workman. He actually pushed Gage Workman off of playing shortstop, moved him to third because he is so good defensively. And that's kind of the big home. Offensively, he struggled in college. I think there was a lot bigger projectable thoughts that he was going to be able to create a bigger bat. That didn't happen in Tampa Bay. So far in his minor league career, it's been, I think, kind of so-so. You mentioned like he is starting to pull the ball a little bit more. He doesn't hit a lot of ground balls, but his line drive rate is bad. It's just like really bad. In this year in Double A, 37, or I'm sorry, that was his ground ball rate, 12% line drive. In Triple A with Pittsburgh, 17%. He just doesn't have like a great knack for barreling. He also is not running a whole bunch, and I think that's a part of his game that he can definitely move. So, maybe, like you said, I'm not big on Alika Williams. As I kind of moved off of Gage Workman, that whole kind of ASU team fell apart. I think even if Alika does get the bat going and kind of revamps who he is offensively, I just still think it's going to be pretty low tier. If it got to double-digit homers, I would be relatively surprised. He hasn't shown the app to steal a whole bunch, and I just don't know if we're going to ever get there. He's never stolen more than 6 bases at a level. So I'm not the biggest on Alika, though playing time is viable here. Great to see him start pulling the ball more, but we've got enough of those players that are really good. The Luis Matoses of the world that make a lot of contact that aren't hitting and stealing. Could have argued Sal Frelick, who we're going to talk about, but he just crushed a bomb in I think it was second or third game. Alika, I'm pretty mediocre about here because I think this is a hardcore defensive first shortstop that if you get extra offense, you're happy. So better real life than fantasy player.
Yeah, I wonder what the difference is in terms of Alika Williams' offensive ceiling versus someone like Taylor Walls in Tampa Bay, right? We think of Taylor Walls as a glove first player who's versatile, and I think even the scouting grades I've seen on Williams' hit tool on Walls' hit tool are better than Williams, so that gives you a little more security, and I think we saw better level-to-level consistency from Taylor Walls in the minors going through the Rays system than we've seen from Williams to this point. I'll broaden this up a little bit as I throw it to you. As you look at guys like Nick Gonzales, Alika Williams, Jared Triolo, Tucupita Marcano, and Leover Peguero, who just got brought back up recently as well. Who's good in that group? Who sticks? I guess you could count Jiwan Bay as part of this. He was up a little earlier, but I think there are plenty of questions about how much he's actually going to hit in the long run, even though he steals bases for us from a fantasy perspective. How many of those guys, if any, are part of the next great Pirates team?
That's interesting what Chris was saying about the Alika Williams line drive or hit tool, I guess. You got a 40 out of 50 on Fangraphs, and yet you have this problem with line drives, and it also manifests in his batting average. I mean, you've got a guy here that strikes out less than 20% of the time and has shown some power at different stops, and yet he keeps throwing up these 230s and 250s. Like, that speaks, I think, to less of a hit tool than you expect. I mean, yes, he doesn't strike out, but hit tool is not just not striking out. And so I'm interested to see how much Pittsburgh has unlocked with him, because there are a fair amount of differences. Like, it looks like Tampa was trying to get Alika Williams to hit the ball in the air.
Yeah.
Like, the bigger samples, the fly ball rate is going up. Like, Alika Williams had a 39 in A ball, and then a 46 in high A, and then a 50% fly ball in double A. So it looks like they were trying to get him to lift the ball, and that wasn't working. And in fact, Pittsburgh, it looks like they said, I don't know what it is. Ground ball rates can come from mechanics, but mechanics are kind of hard to change quickly. So I would guess that Pittsburgh told him to target different pitches. They just said, like, you do better you're a better low ball hitter actually, or a better high ball hitter actually, or whatever it is, and maybe they have unlocked something. I do find his combination just in AAA of age, walk rate, strikeout rate, and power really intriguing. So there's something that I like about that. But Pereira, he definitely for fantasy steals more bases. And is more of a stolen base threat. This year, he already has 21 stolen bases. Last year, he had 28 in 2021, and 417 plate appearances. So he steals bases, but he also strikes out more, whiffs more. The power is really inconsistent. I kind of see Pereira as an up and down guy. And so I'm not that into him. You know who I like the best out of all these guys? And it's a bit of a feeling. But Jared Triolo. There's something that I like about his combination of strikeout rates and then just some possibly emerging power. Like, he doesn't hit the ball on the ground all the time. He hasn't shown great power yet, but he doesn't hit the ball on the ground all the time. I don't know if that's damning or not. Maybe would you rather have a guy who hits the ball on the ground all the time but hits it hard and you could try and lift it, or a guy who already hits the ball in the air some, but doesn't hit it that hard?
I think
that's
I'd pick
Alika
the
Williams
former.
versus Triolo.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I like Triolo. There's something I like about Triolo. He just, comparing him to Alika Williams, he's had similar strikeout rates and much better batting averages. So, like, I do believe in his hit tool. They both have 40-50, Triolo and Alika Williams, in terms of hit tool, but I believe in Triolo's hit tool.
Yeah, a little more consistency with the hard contact for Triolo. So I think that would probably be something that I would look at and say that's better. I don't know if any of these guys are on the next great Pirates team, at least in meaningful roles. I mean, I think Nick Gonzales was the player people were the most excited about at the time these players all entered the org. And some of the struggles we've seen from Nick Gonzales, I think, can be reasonably attributed to injury, right? But
Yeah,
the other part of the story was playing really high altitude, lower level competition in college that probably juiced up the offensive numbers beyond a point where we could really get a good sense of his true talent.
Yeah, and I think also like an attempt to lift the ball maybe mechanically in a way that opened up a real hole on the top of the zone. Because as much as you can blame the bad competition, he didn't strike out this much. It didn't, like, he really just exploded with the strikeouts after he was drafted. And I have to think that this is something that he sort of mechanically opened up. Sort of what I gather about him is that
I completely agree, because in this past AFL, because I've seen him, he did 2 stints in the AFL, and I watched him in college and just seen different things. One of the first things that stands out about Nick Gonzales is the bat speed, like explosive bat speed. Seemed to kind of slow down a little bit in the majors, and the most apparent thing of anything this past year was that he had the big old massive hole at the top of the zone. He was chasing high fastballs left and right and couldn't make contact with it. And you kind of assume a guy with big bat speed was maybe cheating on maybe what he felt uncomfortable with breaking pitches lower in the zone and feeling he could just catch back up, and guys were just attacking him left and right. If he could get that fixed, I think he represents the best tools of all these players. They're just kind of falling apart. We kind of glossed past him, but just Lever Pereira, just with the stolen bases. If you want to talk about a player that fits the best fantasy mold, it's him of anybody. In 2022,
if he gets the full shot,
if he gets the full shot, but 28 stolen bases in Double-A, 10 homers. He's a double-digit power guy with 20, 30 plus stolen bases. If you really believe in Alika Williams, okay, that's cool that he could maybe hit 15 homers, but the guy has never stolen double digits. His best year at Arizona State, by the way, he hit 333 with 4 homers and 9 stolen bases. And it has always been the same thing. So Pereira actually represents, I think, the best set of fantasy tools. Nick Gonzales, the best overall tools to build off of. And Triolo might actually be, the most moldable piece of clay with that hard hit. And that just leaves maybe me being more negative on Alika than I should. But it's just defensive first. And like you said, maybe none of these guys are the next great Pirates team. But if I was making a bet, it'd be Nick Gonzales and Lever Pereira. Those would be the two guys I would look at. Even if they were moved on to another team, those would be the two fantasy guys I'm betting on.
Yes, it's a group that is intriguing, but has plenty of questions around each and every one of them.
Like in a 12-team dynasty, even if you have minors and stuff, like I don't know.
Probably not any of these guys. The closest is Nick if they just continue giving him time and we see the bat maybe progress at the end of the year.
I'd want to see like a better max EV by the end of the season. I'd want to see more barrels by the end of the season, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure any of these guys are.
The Auto New League that Welsh and I are playing in new this year is a really good litmus test for like a 12-team keeper league. So those rosters are huge and
good
players are very affordable when they're just like popping up like this. I didn't even think about bidding on any of them.
Not 1 second.
But they
not
are
1 second of these guys. No, they're not. None of them. I think every single one of them. Gonzales could be. There's no chance Pereira is. Alika's not. Nick Gonzales is the only one that might be rostered in the Otno League.
No, and just for the sake of comparison, I just picked up Michael Busch. Like, to me, Michael Busch is a little more interesting in terms of his ceiling, even though he's 25 already. And I think timing in a lot of keeper leagues is about being ahead of the trade deadline. That's a big part of why we're going to talk about some Double-A guys a little bit later on in the show, because Michael Busch might be an extra guy for the Dodgers. If the Dodgers are going to go out and upgrade the rotation or find veterans to upgrade other spots in the roster, Michael Busch is the kind of player that a non-contending team wants back because they can just play him every day.
Hey, maybe Michael Busch is the next great Pirate. We never know. He might be the next great Pirate
for Kelly. Nick Gonzales is owned in both of my Auto New leagues.
Interesting,
but none of the other guys.
Roster percentage is 59%.
Well, this actually works out really well. Sal Frelick is also up. He's a more exciting prospect, I think, than all of these guys so far.
82% rostered on it.
Yeah, I think Frelick has his fans and he's got his detractors, like many prospects. He's a little small, and I think there are questions about how much power he's going to get to consistently in games. Just hit his first big league homer on Monday night. It's kind of an important one. It tied a game against the Reds. The Brewers eventually won. Made a couple nice catches in the debut.
0.095 ISO in AAA this year.
And he had a couple injuries at AAA this year too, so that complicates it even more. Where, the power he was showing at high A, Double-A, and AAA last year, split across the 3 levels, that's probably a better snapshot of what he can do. But that was 11 home runs combined.
Also kind of below average.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to whether or not he keeps the K rate nice and low and how much he runs. He's been a pretty good base stealer in the minors, but not like a 40-plus steal guy so far. Who does he remind you of when you look at the current and recent pool of big league players? I was actually surprised to see Frelick as high on some prospect lists as he has been upon arriving in the big leagues. I'll throw this to you first, Welsh.
Where do you think, where was he sitting that surprised you, and where do you think he should be?
He's inside James Anderson's top 50. I just thought based on the It is because of promotions and graduations. I thought he was more of like a 75 to 100 range guy. So this
That's
is
where I had him. Yeah.
this is picking some nits.
Well, actually,
could
I'm
see-
actually the middle. I think I had him 50 to 75. I want to say I had him on the low, right outside the top 75, and I moved him back into like the 60 range because, off the top of my head, I haven't grabbed that question of what you said, like who's the major league comp. But I think this is going back to maybe being similar to Luis Matos, another, in the minors, high contact guy, low strikeouts, which has been really good, solid walk rates, who put up big numbers. He had 10 homers with 15 stolen bases while hitting over 300 at both AA and AAA. Much better track record. But now in 33 games in the majors, still representing a great strikeout rate, but he's hitting 260 with 1 homer and 3 stolen bases. These are just both guys that have a really good plate discipline, plate presence, that just don't put up monster stats. And I think they're both good points leagues guys. I think Frelick is a great points league guy. We saw what that power can be, but I just don't know if he's a 15-15 guy. I mean, the stolen bases, to your point, in 2022, the guy ended up stealing, I'm trying to do the math, like 25 stolen, 24 stolen bases. So if he's a 10-20 guy long term, I think you're going to be really happy with that, with really good contact skills. But I don't think there's going to be huge developed power. And I don't think this is going to be another Corbin Carroll. I think that might be something people are like, hey, smaller stature guy, makes lots of contact, doesn't strike out even less. Hey, he just hit a homer in 3 games. No, I don't think so. I think this is just low-end power with some stolen bases if he's hitting at the top of the lineup. It's actually cool that he was hitting 4. I think that was really telling. Putting him at the 4 spot opens up a world of possibilities. If he keeps doing that, he's exponentially more valuable than Matos right now, just because, if he's hitting for high contact, he's going to have more RBI opportunities. But I think this is another one of those players we're looking at with like waning power potential, but more speed than a guy like Alika, like we talked about.
I can't believe the state of that lineup right now is such that Frelick has hit cleanup in back-to-back games within his first 3 games in the league.
We've seen that a ton, though, with rookies this year, where they got kind of just thrown into the fray. I think, Ellie got thrown into the fray. There were a ton of guys that were like 3-4 lead off in the first 10 games to really test them. Sometimes I wonder if it's also about maybe the pitch selection that they might see in that point of the order, or to your point, it might just be like, this roster is so decimated, we just want a guy that's going to make some really good contact if we've got guys on in front of him so we can drive in some runs.
Yeah, and if you watch him, you'll see like his 2-strike approach, he shortens up, just puts the ball in play, and good things can happen sometimes when you do that. So I'm trying to figure out, like, I think the lazy comp that I make, well, yeah, here's my lazy one first.
Right.
My floor for a guy like this is always like Steven Kwan, like super low K rate, runs, little bit of power, but I think he's got more power than Steven Kwan.
And
it's
maybe
just like,
a little bit more whiff, right?
Probably a little more whiff, probably a little more power. That's why it's like it's an imperfect comp, but that's just where I start. Like in terms of weird roto players that we've had that have come in recently, I would start there, but I think you have to start adjusting the dials.
So yeah, I'm trying to do that. I'm looking at 12 to 16% strikeout rate for my comps. I think. Let me see. What has he done?
He's a 10% plus walk guy, almost at every single level.
No, but I mean in terms of what are his strikeouts rate? Because I'm looking at my comp list now, not him. He's projected for 14. He's projected
he's under
for
15 by all the projection systems, which is pretty nice to see for a guy debuting.
So I'm looking for under 16% strikeout rate with actual walks, and then I'm looking for a sub 108 109 max EV, and a highest ground ball rate, but not at like a 60, not over 50. And the names that come up are Nico Horner. That would be, I think, on the top end for his speed, as Horner has 22 stolen bases already. Mauricio Dubon is one that gives me pause because Mauricio Dubon has a 106.8 max EV. And Frelick so far has shown us 106.5 as his best, using even AAA values. So of my comps, he has the worst max EV, and so Dubon might be one of the best comps for him. However, Dubon also only walks 3% of the time, so it's not it's not a great comp for his approach. Andrew Benintendi is on this list.
Yeah, I think that's an easy veteran one to.
Yeah, that works for me actually. Andrew Benintendi works for me, and Brendan Donovan, but Donovan doesn't really have this speed. Here's the one of the nicest ones: Bryson Stott. Bryson Stott walks 6% of the time, strikes out 15.7% of the time, has a 130 ISO, has a 108 max, 47% ground ball rate, 9 homers and 19 stolen bases.
What is Stott's average EV? Do you have that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Because I just feel like Stott hits the ball a lot harder consistently. That I mean, if he was Bryson Stott, I feel like we would be pretty happy. I mean, Nico
Bryson
Horner
Stott
as well,
has a 34% hard hit with an average 88. I don't know.
Yeah, if he could
4%
pretty
barrel
consistently,
rate.
88.1 last year, and
I think he could be Bryson Stott.
That's
Now
9
Bryson Stott
homers,
hit
19 stolen
234
bases.
last year and 301 this year. So there's, whatever Bryson Stott's true talent is, you have to figure that out.
right.
But let's say Bryson Stott's true talent is a 275 hitter with 12 to 14 homers and 25 stolen bases. I think that actually sounds okay for Frelick.
Yeah, I'll buy that. The good version of Bryson Stott sort of lines up with the expectations that I have for Frelick. The Brewer comp I was thinking about as I was making breakfast this morning, because that's all I ever think about, was Nori Aoki.
I hope he runs better routes.
Well, I was focusing only on the offensive production. Nori Aoki kept his K rate under 10% in each of his first 5 big league seasons. Crept up over 10 for that last one, but kind of a fun player for a brief time. And he entered the big leagues at age 30, so we probably got him post-peak too.
Yeah, totally. I saw him in Japan. He was a star.
All right, let's move on to a few other topics here. I was wondering if the debut of Jackson Wolf may have been a little bit overlooked. I don't know if he's going to be a good starting pitcher because he doesn't throw particularly hard, but he's 6'7". I bet the ball looks like it's just jumping out of his hand, even if it's 88, 89 for the fastball. I think the model liked him a little bit, so what do you think Jackson Wolf ends up being? Just a multi-inning reliever?
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 innings. That's pushing it for the model even, but it's had 107 stuff plus on the fastball, 120 on the slider, 130 on the change. I think the number I believe the least, and that it makes sense because of how the model works, is the changeup. But 107 fastball, 120 slider would be a good foundation. And I see enough where I'm like, this could work. Because what he is a really tall sinker baller. And it's called a four seam, but that doesn't matter. If it's for the model, it doesn't matter if it's a four seam or sinker, whatever it is. It's still a fastball. It doesn't really matter. But what he's got is that 2-plane pitch. It's got the same amount of horizontal movement as it does ride. And that's something that people are looking for. Now, a lot of times they're looking for bigger numbers in both directions. And so Wolf doesn't have a tremendous amount of ride, but he does have a 2-plane fastball that would look really strange, I think, coming from where he is, given his height. And so I'm not sure it's something that'll last forever. And, a 76-mile-an-hour breaking ball is not ideal, but it is something that might work in short stints. And I'm definitely intrigued to see more,
I kind of thought it was like Alex Young Welsh, like the former Diamondback, current Red. I kind of thought that was what we were looking at in terms of core skills. Pretty big K rates for Jackson
Young,
Wolf.
maybe.
Yeah. Great. Well, I was curious about how many sub 90 fastballs register in at like plus stuff plus on the fastball. But that's the kind of where I'm alluding to. Like, how many times do we see stuff plus over 101 over with a sub 90s fastball? It's weird that it did that because it's like pretty low spin rate. I think it was 2100 on the fastball. So I guess if it's a sinker, that plays a little bit. If it's registered more as a sinker, that would be better. But that's a low spin rate fastball, really low velo on it in general. Good variance between the pitches, but I think he's a multi-inning reliever. They've done this with, and again, not to like big pitchers, but like Michel Baez, another big guy that they put in the bullpen. I think he could be a spot starter and throws a lot harder. I think this would be a good situational lefty long term. Maybe I'll be wrong about it. I don't have firm belief that this is a starter, someone that's heavy fantasy relevant. I just don't know how the stuff is going to play up over a long period of time. And, like you said, the plus numbers, I don't know how, if you would say how sticky they're going to be long term with the stuff that he's putting out there.
Yeah. I just thought he was a little odd because of the statistical results and even the brief look at the model I had. And he's an outlier of sorts because he's 6'7" with all that sink. A couple other news items to get to. Austin Wells bumped up to AAA in the Yankees organization. Welsh, I think this is more just because Jose Trevino is out for the season. I think they brought up Ben Rortvedt to be their backup on the big league club. Needed to go ahead and move Wells up a level. I don't know if we've talked about Wells with you specifically in the past. I'm curious where you're at on his bat and his chances of sticking defensively at catcher, even part-time, as he continues his ascent toward the Bronx.
Yeah, I interviewed him, I guess it was 2 AFLs ago. And I remember asking him, it was one of the weirder interviews. He had actually just won player of the week. And I was just like, oh, this is cool. I'm like, did you get anything? And he was like super pissed. He got nothing. He's like, I got a piece of paper. And he was like salty about it. Now, because, sometimes I'll have like these big necklaces and stuff. And he's like, nope, didn't get anything. And one of the first questions I asked him at the gate was did the Yankees at all ask him to play anywhere else while he was there? And he said, we've never had one conversation about me playing another position. Well, shoot to now. And the thing that's going on is they're saying that his bat is ready for the majors right now, but defensively he is not. And they're still not toying around with him coming off of that position. So, I think the bat is great. He's explosive, 11 homers in Double-A this year, but the average has stunk. And that's something we're going to have to monitor continuously. And defensively, he's behind. So if the question is he an option this year? Just don't think so, because there have been no positive talks about him defensively. And really, the downtick in his batting average is something they've got to be worrying about, because I don't think this was like him altering to try to hit for more power. I think this might be coming back to, we've talked about it with where you have a catcher. Like I've said this a million times, Carson Kelly talked about how he was a hit-first catcher when he came up, and then they spent 2 years working on him defensively, and all that work made him come off of his offense, and he struggled offensively because of the defensive focus. I wonder if that same thing could be happening, and Wells might take a little bit more time to fully push if they're going to continuously do the catching stuff. So I'm not insane on Austin Wells. I'm not like a huge big push. I do think he's got crazy big raw power and he's got a great bat. It just seems to be lagging behind with this defensive drag. So I don't know when this is going to be like a positive push, but it's probably not this year.
Yeah, he just turned 24 about 2 weeks ago, so more age appropriate to be at AAA for the end of this season. The numbers haven't been bad at the plate at AA. I mean, you kind of pace it out. It's high 20s home run power. It's non-zero speed.
I've been looking at bad fastballs.
Austin Wells, but he's hitting
Wells.
he's hitting under 240 though. You don't like this. I mean, yeah, to your point, he's got like a 200 plus ISO and a double-digit walk percentage, but the contact numbers have been really, really bad. But I guess he is getting the ball in the air, really low ground ball rates, which work in his favor because he can hit the ball really hard.
Why didn't he come up after the Trevino injury?
He's behind defensively. Like they literally said like 2 weeks ago, they said his bat is ready now. His ability to call games is not. They don't feel good. I don't know why. They just, it's been 2 years of this. I mean, that was literally his push in the AFL. It has been 2 years of this. So why is it taking so long?
Like give the manager
The pitch com?
The pitch com.
Yeah, but I might also be framing. It might be all this. Because I agree with this. I think with rookie pitchers nowadays, when you get the pitch com, let the pitchers just decide, especially a veteran pitcher with a rookie catcher, just let him get in there.
Most of that staff is pretty veteran.
Exactly. So it's got to be more about framing.
Schmidt is almost a veteran.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you could let Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon and Luis Severino just call their own. It wouldn't really be that big of a deal. It seems like something more teams would start to do at some point. Now they get the tech for it.
This is a Yankees team that needs offense.
Yeah. But to Welsh's point, I think you need to see a little more consistency with that. I wonder if he's gone too far, too extreme with the fly balls, because a 26.5% ground ball rate is really, really low. I mean, there's a lot of weakly hit fly balls that are just turning into pretty easy outs, despite his ability to do some damage. One other news-related item to get to, Brandon Barriera. Oh, man, that's a tough one to get if you can't roll the R's, and I can't roll the R's this morning.
I cannot either.
He is healthy again at single A, prospect in the Blue Jays organization. He said shoulder and elbow injuries that have kept him to just 18 and a third innings in game action so far. He's one of those guys, though, if he's healthy, especially for these final 2 months, maybe the fall league's possibility. More importantly, he'd be on a lot of potential breakout lists for 2024.
Barri.
Yeah. Iera.
Barriera. I've always
Barriera.
I can't roll. I can't roll, so I can never.
Couldn't do it. I try. I've taken enough.
Let's see. Wait. Try it. Try it one more time. Try it.
Barriera. Oh, see, I do a German. I do the German R's, and I start doing the hard one.
Yeah, getting a little like Barriera.
Barriera.
Yeah. So electric stuff if he can stay healthy, but more of just a wait and see sort of guy. Maybe someone that's been a little bit forgotten about because of all the lost time this year.
I totally agree with what you're saying. I will say, like, I worry about guys like that early on with the injury. It is electric stuff, but also like there are a lot of really good pitchers in the post 100 to 150 range. I'm not saying to not target him.
Yeah, and he's 19 and
there's a long way to go, but I mean, you want to, like, when you get out to the top 150 of prospect lists, there are the Jackson Jobs coming back. Jackson Ferris with the Cubs is kicking back up. Yumin Lin with the Diamondbacks has been really good. Marco Wright. I mean, I'm just throwing out that maybe I'll miss the boat a little bit, but if you're in a league that has maybe like free agents of prospects that are post like 150, there are just so many good pitchers, which makes me not invest sometimes heavy in pitching because of what you can do in the offseason. He would be one, but if it's over the, I don't know, like I said, the Marco Reyes or the Yumin Lins, I probably don't due to injuries, but he could be a big breakout if healthy, if he gets some action at the back half of this year and starts moving, but there's still a long way to go. And I also think about, I don't think you had this on your list, but like, did you guys see what the Rockies did? And they announced 2 days ago or yesterday? 3 of their top 5 pitching prospects all having Tommy John surgery. It was all announced together. Gabriel Hughes, who's probably their best pitching prospect after they just drafted Chase DeLaunder, Jackson Cox, and I think it's Johendry Vargas. They announced it as a group. All of their top pitching prospects, the guys who have been theoretically the best, they're all having Tommy John surgery. That's weird. And I think about that when I think about the high-end investment of like the young pitchers in some of these orgs and making that heavy investment. Not that Brewer's going to take that same path, but it's just that's Rockies, in my head with the Rockies.
The Rockies minor league system is also high altitude, right? Like they have Colorado Springs as one of their places, and
yes,
is it that's just Colorado Springs, or is there some other stuff?
Albuquerque's their AAA.
Albuquerque, yeah,
that's high.
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely forgetting who the AA is, but
they're Hartford now, I think. No, they're all the way out in Hartford.
Right. Hartford.
Colorado Springs is high A or something.
I think Colorado Springs is low. It used to be AAA, and then I think they moved it down to low.
Yeah, I thought it was AAA.
Colorado Springs might not be affiliated anymore.
You might be right about that. Let's see, Colorado.
They had the s'more logo, I think. The Rocky Mountain vibes, I think.
But some of this is changing around those players. So I see Albuquerque Isotope, Grand Junction. That's in Colorado, right? Grand Junction Rockies.
Colorado.
Okay, so here it is. Yeah, you're right. They are gone. Colorado Springs is gone. So it's Asheville at low A, Lancaster high, Hartford double, and Albuquerque triple.
What's Grand Junction Rockies?
That is the that was the former rookie level that is now defunct. Those the Boise Hawks and Grand Junction. Those were when we had short season ball, and those are gone.
Lancaster is one of those parks that I believe it's both altitude and there's a jet stream that has been like blowing out at 20 plus miles per hour ever since that park was built.
And their name is the Jet Hawks.
Yeah. Look up
that's what happens to fly balls.
Look at the old Delino DeShields Jr. numbers from his time in Lancaster. You'll have a nice little chuckle about that performance. It was very impressive.
Well, the only reason I'm bringing it up is, and this has all been moving around, right? So, in the course of those prospects' lives, they may have played in Colorado Springs or wherever, but there seems to be like a fair amount of altitude in their minor league system, and I just wonder if they're doing enough to make sure that rest and recovery. Program.
Are they like surgically altering their arms for this? Like, I mean,
no. That I'm saying, are they doing enough to increased rest and recovery because altitude decreases that.
Increased fatigue units from the conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you got to want. I don't know if they've made any big changes in that organization, but like I think it's super suspicious that all their top pitching prospects had Tommy John.
Yeah, as
maybe,
right. That's what I'm sort of talking about. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm saying maybe there's an altitude issue there.
Yeah, maybe, and maybe more rest. Chase DeLander is here. I saw him over at the Diamondbacks complex. I've been perusing some complex over the last week as draft prospects. No, he's not. Now there are DVR actually are talking about this. It's so weird. Arizona does this more than Florida, but the teams will bring out their college bats and they'll let those guys start playing, and those guys will start playing here in rookie ball, which might seem weird. And then they'll only play a couple games and they'll move on. Where Chase Davis with the Cardinals, who was just drafted U of A, he just started. He was the first rookie to start anywhere, and he went to A-ball. He didn't come here to rookie ball. So in these complexes, I'm seeing these guys. But what happens is the pitchers, high school or college, they don't, but they just come and hang here. And Chase DeLander is here, and I wonder if he's going to pitch at all. He is hanging with the group. They're going to the games. He's doing the process, but he's not doing anything. And maybe coming back to some guys are having surgeries, maybe because of wear and tear, and maybe they're going to be a little bit more hold back on some of these guys. That maybe DeLander's just going to sit here, not pitch at all this year, rest, and then just go. Maybe they have in your mindset of what you're saying, they have a better concerted effort of fixing whatever is going on with them, because there's some of these orgs that are struggling.
What's up, dude?
He can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't have headphones on. How's it going?
What's up, buddy? What's your take on Chase DeLander?
What do you think of Chase DeLander?
Who that?
Okay.
Good times.
He has it right. But it just comes back to like there's so many of these orgs where the Angels seem to struggle in development and they just take as ready as possible, and the Rockies, if they know what they're doing with pitching, it'll be something we'll all find out from years from now, because it doesn't seem like they know what they're doing with their pitching development.
Right.
Yeah, it just seems like it's far away from many other orgs at this point, and they
Can I
have
ask one-
unique challenges.
Can I ask one? It just popped in my head. Have you had experience? Are enough teams hyper? You would think they should be, but sometimes I think they're not at all. Do you think teams are hyper aware of exactly what you just said? Like a team like the Rockies, do you think they're hyper aware of the altitude adjustments that happen to their own pitchers and the wear and tear? Is enough of that in organizations that like
I think
there's
so.
people? Okay.
Well,
There's people yes,
I wonder,
he's correct.
Yeah, on the major league level, sometimes some of these things I think are thought of as more important for major league, because those are the good players and that's where the money is. And so, yes, they had like a nap room, in Colorado. I don't know if they still do, but they did at some point.
But that's what I mean in the minors, though.
Thank God we have a nap room, so they had some thinking about it. The players for the Rockies 100% are super aware of it, and the players are sleeping in hyperbaric chambers. They're doing their workouts in San Francisco and San Diego because they know that they'll get better rest and they'll sleep that night than when they come home. So they never work out when they come home. They always try to work out on the road. There's all sorts of things that the players are doing to deal with this. And I get the sense that the team must be aware of it and must be thinking about it and must be spending some time and money working on it. But I don't know that means that it has permeated the minors.
See,
Because
that's what I'm
lots
referring
of
to.
teams that do things at the top that they don't do it all the way through the bottom.
Well, and like clearly the Angels being one of them, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like it is in the player development rooms. Is there a person that is cognizant that not only are we going to have elevation issues with some of our stuff, but maybe to what you're saying is you might have more rest and there might be a better... I just wonder how many organizations have active player development in the minors thinking about the bigger things that you're talking about. Like hopefully, you're not breaking news to a team that's like, oh yeah, maybe we should be resting some of these pitchers in these high elevation places more. And that's what I feel like is still lacking in many spots in baseball.
Across baseball. I mean, I think the best teams are doing stuff like that. There are things that end up being an impediment to this, and one of those is you're talking about how many people are in a minor league system, like 300 or
Yeah, I mean, there's four levels of, let's call it like 25. There's 100, and then rookie ball.
Oh no, they have a limit, 180.
Yeah. Because
180.
rookie, you can put like 50. You can put like 50 people in rookie
They have
ball.
some
That's the
limit
cheat
to
code.
it. So it's 170 kids, but then you think about the coaches, and you probably have another sort of 7,500 coaches, right? So, and then you have your what are they called? The pitching directors, the coordinators and stuff, right? So I would say probably in terms of personnel and management and coaches, you've got 300 plus people that you're thinking about, right? As opposed to a major league team, which, either you have a 40-man roster and 10 coaches, 15, like at the most, you're talking about 55, 60. Plus, your front office people at the major league level, you don't have to keep them in line as much. Like you hired them recently, they're at the top of their jobs. You're not telling them what to do as much. They're the ones telling other people what to do, right? So you have 300 people in the minors where you're trying to get them on board with whatever it is at any given time, and you're like, probably if you're the Rockies, you're like, let's focus on something like throwing strikes. I'm sure that's something that they would say. Like we're going to work on controlling the zone, and you make a T-shirt, right? You make a T-shirt, control the zone, and you pass it out in the spring.
That's what the guy does. He just goes to Teespring and he makes a shirt, and he's like, I did my job.
Well, I mean, that
sounds like the Angels development.
You're belittling a little bit, but the problem is that you have these 300 people you're trying to get a message to, and if the message is too nuanced, it's like, well, let's think about rest and recovery. Does rest and recovery go on a T-shirt? Can you broadcast like rest and recovery in a good way to 300 people?
Just
so
wear
then
T-shirts
it becomes
that say
a thing
hydrate on them.
Yeah, well, how about wear T-shirts that say "I still play in the bigs and I'm healthy"? Like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess there are coaches. I'm not trying to make this big. I already made this big long thing. They're obviously like pitch and development coordinators and stuff like that. But sometimes it feels like they're missing an Eno in their organization. Like a guy, you have to have a bigger macro perspective of, instead of being like Bryce Miller told you, like, hey, we had a AA initiative, just throw strikes, and it's like, okay, but what else is going into this? I guess when I hear you talk about some bigger things that can be more long term, are they having those discussions? And it seems like the answer is always yes at the major league level, maybe not so much at the minor league level, which worries you about the development.
It's organization at the minor league level, yeah.
I would guess there's also occasionally some things lost in the game of telephone. By the time a player starts talking to people in the media, they might be simplifying the message, also not trying to go overboard, tipping their hand as far as things
as
that
I'm
they think
saying,
are
there's
unique to their org,
simplification
too.
also to them. There's my main point was there's 300 of them. So any sort of broadcast message gets boiled down or messed up. Game of telephone, whatever it is, it's like it's hurting cats to some extent, so it can become difficult to do that. But
it sounds like the Rockies can put TJ on their shirt for the pitchers and the minors. So
I got TJ.
Yeah, we're getting TJ.
Just brutal. Let's go to our AA leaderboard surfing. I am not allowed to speak about Brewers prospects on the show. Self-imposed ban for the rest of the season. So I will ask Welsh, Tyler Black, are you buying the AA success? He's at 290, 432, 543, 14 homers, and he's 45 for 53 as a base stealer. The best part of this, I was looking at the RotoWire minor league hard hit numbers, 31.8% hard hit rate too. So it's a good enough hard hit rate where we're not going to ask questions about the quality of the contact the way we will about some other players that we're about to discuss.
Yeah, I will tell you, I was never a big Tyler Black guy. Got to see him a bunch in the AFL. I thought he looked really mediocre, but what does that matter when he is one of the most dominant minor leaguers this year? 45 stolen bases, double-digit homers, under 20% K rate, an almost 20% walk rate, which is just absurd. He's not hitting the ball on the ground a whole bunch, which is great. 38% ground ball rate, fly ball rate's over 40%. He's pulling the ball. He's literally not doing anything wrong, and he looks elite at that level. I don't know from when I've seen him, does this look like a future all-star player in the approach? I didn't quite see it, but the numbers speak for themselves. So this is one I would kind of even backtrack to my personal bias, because sometimes that is just, like I told you with James Wood before, like every time I see him, he just stinks. But that doesn't, he's amazing in other spots. Tyler Black is literally checking every single box that you would want. So as far as from a breakdown perspective, there's not much I have to say outside of, these numbers are elite at a minor league level. He's already had the tutelage of playing in the Arizona Fall League, I guess at like a really, not a young age, but like a young production to the minor leagues and what he has done. And it looks like it's done wonders. So this is a guy to bet on right now for sure. You should speak positive. This is the guy to talk positive about, DVR.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Churio also, but a good story, I think, in Tyler Black. And I think the injuries last year may have been a big part of why the quality of the contact was not as good a year ago. It was a scapula injury. I think there was a broken thumb mixed in there as well. So just
he broke that. I don't know if it was thumb or wrist, but in the AFL, I was at that game. He slid into second, and then he had a cast, and he didn't play the rest of the way because it was either the broken thumb or broken wrist on a slide to second in the AFL. So he's recovered well.
I love his swinging strike rate. And I love his walk rate.
Yeah. He's advanced. He seems advanced at every stage of what he's doing right now. I would just be like, let's get him the hell out of Double A. Yeah, well, you get him out of this level. Like, we're good. We know what you've done at Double A. Let's go to Triple A, or give him a shot at the major league level.
Yeah, I think they could bump him up. They've got Luis Urias down at Triple A right now, trying to work some things out. Maybe once Urias comes back to the big league club, they can bump Tyler Black into that infield rotation at the Triple A level. Let's get to a couple other players here. Everson Pereira, who has recently been promoted to AAA, was putting together a really nice season at AA, and I'm just wondering if he's been a little overshadowed by Jason Dominguez being in the same org.
Yeah, if you're asking me, I think you're clearly right about that. He's been kind of the like a fantasy darling for a long time. I know James has always been very high on him. Results have kind of varied, but you know what? He's raised his batting average for 4 straight levels across 2 years. He's got a really good hard hit strength over on RotoWire. I want to say it was like 34 at least the last time I looked.
114.5 max EV on Fangraphs.
Yeah, big stuff. The 352 batting average right now. A lot of homers. He can steal some bases. I think strikeouts are a little bit more of a problem than we think, but makes really, really good decisions. Absolutely just smashes the ball. Does not hit it on the ground bunch. A 24% line drive rate this year at AA, 27.5 at AAA. So, yeah, this is a great guy. I think this is a prime. If I'm a team trading with the Yankees, I'm actually probably trying to get Pereira in something if they were to become buyers. So when you're talking about getting ahead of things, Pereira is a guy that we have to really look hard at next year. And I think is like a 25-plus home run guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Fangraphs hit tool is 30 or 40 for Pereira, and I can see that. Those are pretty bad whiff rates. Those are pretty bad strikeout rates. I wonder if there's a debate right now in New York if they should just graduate Everson or use him in a trade. And I will say I'm writing a piece about possible fixes for teams, and what's available in terms of rentals is not super exciting. And the Yankees, I think, do need an outfielder, not just when Judge is back. I think, pushing Jake Bauers to a bench role would be a good idea. And Bader's hurt so often that, just getting another outfielder up there. But should it be Pereira or should it be someone that Pereira brings back? What's the market right now for outfielders in the trade deadline? There's Grichuk. That probably wouldn't take Pereira, but the market isn't good. There aren't a lot of great outfielders out there to be had.
Tyler O'Neill might be the biggest name that comes to top of mind.
Okay, that's a good would you rather.
That's a year plus, so that's not a pure rental, and I don't know if it'll cost a Pereira, but maybe you could get Jordan Montgomery back along with Tyler O'Neill for Pereira.
Yeah, just really impressive the numbers though that he put up at AA. Got up to a pretty fast start at AAA, and I just saw our buddy James Anderson just did a screenshot of his updated prospect rankings. Looks like Pereira made a pretty big move up into the top 15 on that list. So
yeah, I don't have him there, but you know who would make sense? What about the Tigers? The Tigers with Eduardo Rodriguez. I guess you were talking outfield. I was thinking of pitching again. I went into them because I know there's sellers, but yeah, I guess the outfield wouldn't help. Because I tend to think of teams who are teams that would maybe semi-middling that would be looking for soon-to-help outfielders that would be able to move off of whether it's expiring contracts in general. But yeah, my brain went to the pitching side of that. So maybe not the Tigers, but the Cubs.
I mean, what do I have here? I'm looking
What
at
about Bellinger?
Bellinger, Bellinger plus something, yeah.
Yeah, Bellinger is the thing. He's the best one because I'm looking at a list of free agent outfielders on COTS, and it's Charlie Blackmon, Randall Grichuk, Enrique Hernandez, Teoscar Hernandez. I mean, if the Mariners want to sell,
One thing I would keep
guy
in
named
mind
Shohei.
though, I think with the outfielders, we see a lot of corner guys who are in the last year of arbitration end up getting non-tendered or flipped in the offseason for very little. Guys like Hunter Renfroe would be probably
he's on that
the
list.
sweet
I
spot
don't
of
think he
this.
would cost anything if the Angels decide to sell.
And that's kind of the bucket that Tyler O'Neill is in terms of what he has shown us around the injuries, where it's like it's really good when he's healthy. He's not healthy very often. He might be the kind of guy that, even though he's got years left, is actually very tradable, aside from all the drama with Ali Marmol and O'Neill earlier this season, right? Like that type of player is not the kind of player that orgs really cling to the way they have in the past. So that might be where we see some outfielders actually get moved. How about this next one? Jorbit Vivas, who's in Double-A right now for the Dodgers. The thing that really jumped off the page in a bad way, a 20.1% hard hit rate based on those RotoWire numbers, but really good strike zone judgment. He's walked as much as he's struck out so far this season.
Oh, it's like a Miguel Vargas clone.
10 homers, 14 for 18 as a base stealer. Is he an extra guy that the Dodgers are going to flip to someone else, or is he actually part of their core? And what do you think about Vivas,
I think they're going to trade this guy. He looks like a lesser Miguel Vargas.
He's got a beautiful swing. If you've ever seen him
Yeah.
play, he's got a gorgeous, beautiful swing. But whether he's hitting 300 or not right now, the inconsistencies are there. I think he's right in the just okay dude. And he's very movable in an organization that has got. I mean, they've got middle infield help. They've got infield help in general across. We're talking about Michael Busch being traded. Your Vivas could be somebody that could be part of 2 or 3 players that they move for an organization that's looking for Double-A plus guys, that can come and help soon. Vivas is the type of guy to me that gets traded to a very low end team. I guess not, but you think of the Pirates, what if the Dodgers were looking for David Bednar and they had to move off a couple people, but we just talked about 4 infielders that the Pirates are trying to deal with. Vivas would literally just be smashed into that group and
In
not
an
really
Ohtani
stand
deal,
out.
he would be the 3rd best player.
Oh, it'd be the 4th or 5th.
Oh yeah,
best
he's
player.
an extra guy. He's the guy you want because of club control and the possibility of him being good enough to be a regular for a couple of years of the club control. I think the comp, even though the numbers sort of jump off the page from a leaderboard perspective, is someone like Josh Smith, who the Yankees traded a couple summers ago to the Rangers. Controls the zone well, has some things that are interesting, doesn't hit the ball hard enough consistently, and as a result, he's really been an up and down guy in Texas. Even though if you were number scouting what he did throughout his time in those minor league systems, you'd be pretty excited about Josh Smith.
Yeah, that's a pretty good comp. Yeah, I think that's in that general range. I think Josh Smith might even be a little bit more versatile defensively, which might help him be able to kind of stay on the field. Vivas is not.
Vivas' glove like?
No, I think he's pretty stuck to where he is. I don't think he's a guy they're going to go throw out in the outfield. But, I'm not sure people would have said that about Josh Smith before he started doing it.
I was thinking about one more player who was at Double-A, is currently in the big leagues, skipped over Triple-A entirely. It's Johan Rojas. He is put together a 130 WRC plus so far at Double-A this year, working in a part-time role kind of in the Christian Pache small side platoon with Brandon Marsh in center field. The tools questions based on the scouting reports really just focus on in-game power. As far as being a great defensive center fielder, having speed, even having good enough hit tool, those things seem to be pretty solid for Rojas. And I think the power gets even further complicated because Double-A Reading, if I remember correctly, is one of the more power boosting Double-A environments that a player can play in. So I'm curious what you think about Rojas. I'll throw this one to you first,
Yeah, he's got this alternating WRC plus that gives me shivers. Below 100, above 100, below 100. It just makes me. It smacks to me of lucky years and unlucky years. And if you look at his BABIP, a lot of those below and above 100 years track with his BABIP. So I think there's someone who's going to be dependent on batted ball luck to be a real fantasy asset.
All right, let's get to a couple mailbag questions here before we go. We're going to rapid fire on these. This one came from Wes. Evan Carter has been on a decent tear since returning from injury. What is the likelihood that we see him in 2023, given the Rangers' needs and given where he appears to be development-wise? What do you think, Welsh?
I think the possibility is there for September. I think when September hits, it is very likely that we could, from things that I've heard. Obviously, you've also got injuries where a guy like Duran is less of an option in the outfield when he's making up for Corey Seager. This team needs to keep pace, though. They have gotten a ton of production out of their outfielders. You know, Leody Taveras has had just a complete rebound season, but I would put it at 10% chance before September, and I would say like maybe 50-50 starting in September that we will see Evan Carter.
You know, I'll throw the next one to you. If you adjust 25 points of WRC plus for each year a player is under the league average, is Junior Caminero going to break the league?
Yeah, I mean, there's no hard situation like that. And as much as we reported that, and that is what the research says, it's not exactly like that. But you know, he's 20 years old right now in Double-A, Junior Caminero. He's got a 104 WRC plus. That does not sound too amazing, but I believe I've got that tab open somewhere.
Oh, I've got a leaderboard for this. I pulled this up going back to 2018.
No, I'm just saying, you know, what the average age is. I've got it.
Yeah, average age, he's well below average. But the guys that have played at that level at age 20 or younger and posted similar WRC pluses in recent years,
Double-A is
Andres Jimenez.
24.4, so he should be getting 4 years of boost. Wow.
Yeah, well, you could have done that for Andres Jimenez, and I think we would have been wrong about Andres Jimenez's ceiling. Jemai Jones put up a huge season, relatively speaking, for his age. Carter Kieboom, he's been really hurt, but also just doesn't look like that guy. Jason Dominguez is in that range right now. Mason Wynn did it last year. Keibert Ruiz did it back in 2018. Leody Taveras, a little under that at 94 back in 2019. The guys that play at 19 versus 20 at Double-A, it's an even shorter list. Those guys tend to be just ridiculous. If you get to Double-A as a 19-year-old, you're usually amazing. Luis Garcia is kind of the more meh example from the last 5 years or so. But
he got to 19, right? He's
20, yeah. I mean, he's 20 days into being 20, so I think he what
are your 19-year-olds in Double-A?
The 19-year-olds going back to 2018, minimum 200 plate appearances. Vlad Jr., which is the best WRC plus of anybody of that group by far. He just destroyed Double-A. Tatis back in 2018.
Jeez.
Jackson Churio doing it right now with the 108. And then Ruiz, also a 19-year-old, and Luis Garcia. Those are the 5.
I mean, that's the group I think he belongs in.
Yeah. Yeah. Really,
and
really
also I would say
stuff.
that some of those names that you named like did not necessarily have the history of Caminero going into that. You know? Am I right? Am I wrong? In terms of at least consistent power. Kieboom, I remember, as being up and down. Garcia
Jimenez didn't have power back then.
Jimenez had no power back then, yeah.
Jemai Jones maybe had some. I'm trying to remember.
He had some big hard hit numbers when he was at the Angels, but he'd move off of outfield to second. And, yeah, nothing really. I mean, Kieboom might have been the most prolific. I thought Kieboom was going to be legit.
Jemai Jones had 150 ISOs or lower heading into that year. And Caminero, heading into this year, had never had a 150 or lower ISO.
So there you go. Maybe Junior Caminero will break the league someday.
I tend to, other than strikeout rate and swing strike rate, I tend to follow things like ISO, fly ball rate, power. I want to know about your power because I think that there's a power number you have to hit to be in the big leagues. You have to hit for power in the big leagues. I think. I mean. You can, unless you're Stephen Kwan or somebody, and even then, Stephen Kwan would be better if he hit for power. You know, so power is hugely, hugely important.
Thanks a lot for those questions. I believe that one came from Eric, and the question before that, I do not recall who it came from, but I appreciate the questions nonetheless. ratesandbarrels@gmail.com is the best place to send those. If you got a question for a future episode, you can find all of us on Twitter. Eno is at Eno Saris. Welsh is at Is It The Welsh. I am at Derek Van Riper. If you don't have a subscription to The Athletic, $2 a month gets you in the door at theathletic.com/rates and barrels. It's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.